They said no Jussie Smollett jokes. Yeah, I know. What a waste of light skin, you know? You know what I could do with that light skin? That curly hair, my career would be out of here. Running Hollywood.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming by and watching another of my fantastic videos. Today I wanted to look at the whole Jussie Smollett situation, and I kind of wanted to look at it as a whole, but also ask two questions that I think are being ignored by most people that are covering this.
What the hell was he thinking? From now on, I ain't never gonna know you're Jussie from now on. You don't even get the you no more. That you was respect. You ain't getting no respect from me.
So for those of you living under a rock for the last couple of weeks, Jussie Smollett is an actor on a show called Empire. And honestly, I've never seen the show. I hear it's well rated. It was well watched up until this whole situation. But anyway, not my thing, and that actually comes into play in a little bit. So, Jussie Smollett, to start with, I have to say the allegations are just that, allegations. Everything is alleged. However, I think there's enough evidence to show that all these things that he actually did. So let's start at the very beginning. So Jussie Smollett apparently thought he wasn't getting paid enough on this TV show. So Jussie did what any young gay black actor would do. He sent himself a threatening letter. And then, of course, he called the police. He showed his bosses at the TV show, all in the hopes that it would somehow raise publicity for him and eventually lead to a bigger salary. Well, apparently it didn't, because he decided that it wasn't enough and he needed to up the ante, if you will. So one night he reports that he has been attacked by some Trump supporters. A couple of white men in red hats that tied a noose around him, threw bleach on him, and yelled something to the effect of, "This is MAGA country." Now, at the time that this was reported, there was significant outcry. However, there are a couple of problems with the story, and let's go over some of those. So first of all, this happened in Chicago. Now, I don't know if you know a lot about Chicago, but Chicago is not MAGA country. And what do I mean by not MAGA country? Well, to put it in perspective, Hillary Clinton, the worst presidential candidate in modern history, won Chicago by over 70%. Yes, that is 70%. And supposedly, that is MAGA country. Now that's just the starters. So also keep in mind that this supposedly happened at 2 a.m. during a polar vortex. So we're talking sub-freezing conditions here. And Jussie went out, he got a sandwich, and on his way back is when he was supposedly attacked. He still had the sandwich. Now, he was attacked off camera. There were cameras all around, but somehow the attack was not filmed on any camera in the area. And this was an area loaded with cameras. So he gets back to the apartment, says hi to the doorman, still has the noose around his neck, still gripping that delicious Subway sandwich. Now, I love me a good chicken bacon ranch melt from Subway, but Smollett, he's a hardcore fan. Anyway, 45 minutes later, he finally decides, hey, I should probably call the police. So he calls the police. They show up, they ask for his phone so they could look through his records. He, by the way, said that he was on the phone with his manager at the time. So he doesn't hand it over. Odd for someone that was just attacked and wants to find the criminals. So let's recap again. 2 in the morning, polar vortex. He still has the sandwich. He kept the clothesline around his neck this whole time. Yeah, now that's dedication. That's dedication to a role, and more especially dedication to a sandwich. That has got to be a fantastic sandwich to hold on through all this. But I digress. Now, all these things immediately raise flags, at least for anybody with a rational mind. I mean, this was really weird. Every part of this situation was abnormal. But it gets better. Now, I said before, there were cameras all over the place. And while the attack wasn't filmed, there were 2 guys in the area at the time. So police investigated that. Not only that, but Smollett eventually handed over a highly redacted copy of his phone calls that day. Now, highly redacted means all the important stuff was blacked out. However, police also got the actual phone records. And they went through and they checked out which ones were actually redacted. And they happened to notice that one of the numbers called was to one of the Osundario brothers. Now, who are the Osundario brothers? Well, they're bodybuilders and they're actors. These brothers of Nigerian descent also happen to have a working relationship with Smollett. From what I understand, they trained him in some way, and one of them even appeared in Empire. They also happen to look an awful lot like 2 suspects in the video that were in the area at the time. Coincidence? Well, we're about to find out. Not so much. So the cops decided to check him out, and for good measure, they raided their apartment. And what did they find? Well, there's a couple of things. First, they found receipts. Receipts for what? Bleach and the supposed noose that was used on Smollett. They were also on video at the local hardware store buying the stuff and had a personal check made out to the brothers from Smollett. All of this is obviously evidence that they were paid to commit this supposed crime. Now, was he actually beat up? Who knows? It wasn't on video. Of all the places that were videoed, and literally every other place was on video, we were able to see him in the sandwich shop on his way home, but for these 30 seconds, he was off camera, and then back on camera for the rest of the time home. So, was he beat up? I don't know. However, the evidence, the huge stack of evidence, seems to indicate that he hired these brothers to supposedly beat him up so he can play this out for sympathy. And of course, eventually try to get paid. The Chicago PD did their investigation. They sent their evidence to a grand jury. Grand jury said, hey, that's enough evidence. Let's convict Smollett for faking this supposed crime. He had 16 felony counts against him. And this is where the story gets even more crazy. Despite this substantial amount of evidence, the prosecutor decided to drop all charges. Not only drop all charges, but seal the records and expunge this whole thing from Smollett's history. So here's my first real question. That question is, if just some average white guy were to do something like this, would he have gotten let off? I'm going to say no. Now here's the thing. It doesn't have anything to do with race. Now the reason why I bring up, in the title at least, white privilege, is because there's this myth that somehow there's a system in place that allows white people some sort of preference in society. And I'm here to tell you that it is not white people who have a preference in society. There is no system in place that benefits them more. But let me clarify. There are people that do get this preference. Who are they? They're the rich and famous. So it turns out that Smollett is good friends with the Obamas. And an aide of Michelle Obama's, Tina Chen, got in touch with the state attorney general, Kim Foxx. And we know this because of a Freedom of Information Act request that exposed the email, which basically requested, hey, lighten up on this guy. Which she did. Not only did she lighten up, she let him off scot-free. What do I mean by scot-free? He paid $10,000 and did 16 hours of community service. And what was that community service? He was hanging out with his buddy Jesse Jackson. That is what got him off the hook. And this goes back to my point. See, it's not about race. It's not about white privilege. It's not about any kind of privilege except the privilege of being rich, being famous, and having friends in the right places. Smollett got away scot-free. There will be no records of this, other than, of course, the news. And he really didn't have to pay any kind of penalty. In fact, to this day, he still claims that he's the victim in all this. He actually has talked about suing Chicago. You see, the rich, the famous, the powerful, they help each other. They don't let one of their own fall. And speaking of Kim Foxx, she happened to say that the reason why she let him off was because he did his time, he paid his money, and he'd never been accused of anything in the past. Well, there's a couple things wrong with this. First of all, he actually is a convicted felon. This is not his first time. And what was his first felony? He was convicted of, wait for it, lying to police. So he is a convicted felon. He has a record. And she still let him off. She also said she recused herself from the case, which she didn't. She never actually recused herself. So there's a lot of things going on with Kim Foxx, and I think this is eventually going to catch up with her. And I think her job as state attorney general, I think that's gone. When Rahm Emanuel has issues with it, with the way that you're doing your job, you're not going to have that job much longer. So back to point. Again, this exposes the real myth of white privilege. It has nothing to do with whiteness. It has nothing to do with race. It has to do with class. Now, I said I had two questions. The other question that I find oddly curious that nobody is asking is, what about the Osundario brothers? Here are two African American men who were taken advantage by somebody in a higher position of power and with more money and obviously more influence, and then thrown under the bus by that same person. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds an awful lot like colonization to me, but it's not being called out because Smollett, being gay, being black, he ranks higher on the intersectional hierarchy. Now, so far, nothing like this has happened, but keep in mind, because Smollett's record has been expunged, these two could be sued for committing a hate crime. So his status, his privilege, has not only cleared him from felony charges, 16 felony charges, apparently it clears him from being a jerk too. And what's even more interesting is this whole thing started about race, yet The real victims here, the Osundario brothers, the ones who were preyed upon by Smollett, well, their race is never considered. In fact, Smollett's lawyer actually said that there's a high likelihood that they wore whiteface when they attacked Smollett. Now, just to wrap up, there's a couple of things that I want to point out. First of all, I think Smollett's career is over. I think he has destroyed himself. No matter how much the media is going to try to prop him up, and boy, are they trying hard. In fact, the NAACP actually nominated this idiot for an Image Award. Are you kidding me? Talk about being propped up by the media. Talk about privilege. We all know that he faked this whole thing, and yet he is still being held up by the establishment. It is absolutely insane, and they're going to hang on to the bitter end. But Empire's ratings are way, 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 way down, and they're going to continue that way because of how this whole thing has gone down, which I think it should. Now, I'm against firing people for saying stupid things on Twitter, for, doing things that aren't breaking the law, that are just stupid. I don't think you should be fired for that. In this case, we know he broke the law. As such, I can't justify why he should keep his job now. But they're going to hang on. Again, they're going to try to prop him up until he drags the ratings down so low that they're going to have to get rid of him. His career is over. And good riddance. I mean, the guy is toxic and obviously not very bright. Really, he could have just said that he was attacked like a week later, not even shown up on any video, walk home, stay out of the camera for 5 minutes, reappear, and end it at that. And with the whole Me Too thing, you don't even need evidence. All you have to do is say that it happened, and it happened. Unfortunately, he tried to create evidence, and that is what lost it for him. Anyway, those are my thoughts on this whole Smollett situation. Honestly, I personally thought it was all entertaining. I mean, this has been one of the best episodes of Empire ever. Not that I've ever watched it, but you know what? If the show is like this, I may have to actually start watching it, because this is the best entertainment on TV I've gotten in a while. Also, I'm curious to see who else stands up for this moron, because then I know who is just as stupid as he is, and I'll know who not to listen to in the future. Because again, this guy is an absolute moron, and anybody who ignores the mountain of evidence and still stands by this guy is obviously just as stupid. So, hopefully you liked the video. I'm not going to give you all that spiel as I normally do. You know what to do if you do like it. And I'll try to get another video out soon. Thanks.